3. I want to welcome everyone here. Today's subject, I've been continuing my live shows about crazy crossovers, and I'm gotta admit, this is new for me to do live shows like this, so I really don't know how to do them sometimes. And so I don't really know, like, hey, like how to interact with some of the audiences and what they're saying like that. Oftentimes I see stuff like there'll be comments there and I'll respond to them and I'll get responses from you, and I'll try and do this as best as I can. I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and anyone who tunes in here. I mean, on because I'm on both TikTok right now as well as YouTube Live, and so anyone who is watching me on YouTube Live, I try and look at your comments, and I try and subscribe to you guys because I feel that's what you would want me to do. So hey. Today I'm going to be talking about two things that I want to see a crossover for that I believe are actually under the same umbrella, which seems to be a theme in this week because when I covered like Fantastic Four, Incredibles, both owned by Disney, also I covered like Muppets and Avengers, also both owned by Disney, as well as, say, Men in Black meets Ghostbusters, both owned by Columbia. And so in other words, these are crossovers that could actually happen if somebody wanted to make a move. But I'm not really certain on this one here because I actually think that there's tomorrow's one is going to be definitely like, okay, some stars need to align on that. It's considering it's Star Trek meets Star Wars. Seriously, I'm not absolutely certain how we're going to make that happen and stuff. So I'm going to check here. Is there anything? Let's see. Oh, okay. Shoot, I didn't even know there was something like that. And okay, apparently there's fan clubs here, and there's got to be some things I'm going to have to look in here. Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing anyone joining me on my YouTube Live, and hey, I don't blame you. I mean, dude, I have some issues kind of getting that thing going on. So, yeah. So let's see. Now, normally when I'm talking about this stuff, I'll usually talk about the history of this stuff. But I got to admit, some of the history of this stuff, I don't really know, really. When it comes to Lord of the Rings, since I like that a bit more than Harry Potter, or at least that's been around longer than Harry Potter, I will have to say that, I mean, I don't even know when these books came out. I think it might have been around the 50s or something like that. I'm told Lord of the Rings was written by Tolkien back when he was in World War II. So while he was fighting in the trenches, he was actually taking time in between his PTSD, which I'm sure he accrued on World War II, because it seems like PTSD is something that we don't associate with people except like after, like before Vietnam. Trust me, soldiers had PTSD from what they saw. I can guarantee on that. So I'm guessing that Lord of the Rings was sort of a coping mechanism for Mr. Tolkien because he just had to, because I mean, I'm sure he probably saw a lot of crap while he was there, and then eventually became like, I don't know, a professor or something like that. Again, I don't really know the timeline here. Hey, thank you for joining us, Mitchell Brown 2. Make sure to like and subscribe on TikTok. And hey, if you know anything about The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, you know, if you do, hey, leave a message. Maybe you can join me or something like that. So anyway, so I believe that J.R. Tolkien, he basically just said like, you know, I'm going to write this. I think he just simply approached a publisher with a postcard with just something that said like, this is a story about a little hobbit, and he's, you know, and they go and with a bunch of dwarves and they meet a dragon or something like that. And then from there, he was able to blossom that into Lord of the Rings, the big trilogy that he wanted to do. He actually wanted to do it as one book, I'm told, but his publisher thought they could chop them up a bit. And of course, we all know where that came from here. And it just sort of existed in our, it was just a literary masterpiece that just existed for a long time. And let's see. Oh, man. Johan Jack, thank you for, you know what? You just, hang on, I'm going to look you up here on YouTube. And we're just going to get you on here, and we're going to subscribe to you. Feel free to subscribe to me, too. Joanne Jack, here you are. Subscribe. Done. Okay, feel free to subscribe to us. Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's somebody named Joe Danny that joined us on 092, joined us on TikTok. Very much welcome. Just talking about The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. So yeah, that'll be fun. So here's the fun thing about this. The Lord of the Rings existed when books were like, a thing. And I think when people before television and movies became so prominent, I mean, hey, that's pretty much all we had were books. It's hard to believe like we ever, in our modern day, we can't even imagine something like that. So, yeah. Let's see. Adolf Ruse Kanzler, I'm going to subscribe to you. Thank you for joining in. So I imagine that, hey, how you doing, Adolf? So, all right. Okay. All right. So I believe that now, okay, there might be people out there that remember this, but when I was a kid, I remember the movies, the animated movies that happened, and stuff like that. So I think one of them was by Rankin Bass, the Hobbit movie. And then I believe that let's see, I believe his name was, what is that guy's name? The guy that directed Fritz the Cat. What was that guy's name? Oh, man, why does that, you know what, this is going to bother me here. Was it Fritz something? No. Okay, I'm actually going to, director, Ralph Bakshi. He was the one who decided to do like Lord of the Rings as an animated film. And he used a technique known as rotoscoping to do a lot of the effects. So when you see a lot of the orcs, like en masse, those are actually real people that they just kind of animated over with the power of rotoscoping. And that was a pretty unique method. Now, if you've ever watched that animated Lord of the Rings movie, it kind of ends around, I think, the second book, or something like that. I'm not really certain. And they just kind of go like, and that's the end of the Lord of the Rings. And I kind of wondered, like, that was it? That was all you guys had? And I kind of felt like, so yeah, I kind of, so I think Rankin Bass actually came back to do Return of the King. So if you look at the animation styles of the Hobbit animated movie and then the Return of the King animated movie, they look the same, but when it comes to that middle one, which I have no idea what deal went on to make that happen. I really don't. I could probably research that, but something tells me that maybe I wouldn't like what I see. I don't know. So yeah. So I'm just kind of going like, so I just kind of like, I remember watching it as a kid, and I remember one time The Return of the King came on, and I taped it, and I just kept watching it over and over, and then I just wanted to read the books. And I read the books, Lord of the Rings, I remember reading in like 6th grade. I remember I had lived with an aunt at the time who had a copy of like all 4 books on the shelf. I'm sure that would probably be worth a lot. I think they were like maybe first editions or something like that. And they seemed like they would be big things and stuff like that. So their covers looked really messy. I remember they were just splotchy little paintings and stuff like that. They were nowhere near like, because I think when I was in, say, 9th grade, I kind of wanted to read them again. So I remember getting an edition that had more modern day covers with some paintings on them. And, here's the thing about Lord of the Rings. I mean, it is, the way it's told as a story is a lot like the way they told epic poems way back when. And in other words, they were just kind of like, they didn't really concentrate on, say, characters or something like that. I feel like our modern day versions of Lord of the Rings have given us this idea that these are the characters there. But Tolkien liked to tell his stories in a very elevated style, which was very common of the type of epics. If you've ever read something like, I don't know, the Iliad or the Odyssey, or the one by Virgil, the Aeneid, which were works that I read in college. I have to admit, they were very much a style of storytelling that we just don't really see now. It wasn't really oh my gosh, I remember the versions of the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings were so weird because they use like one quote for a quote, and then two quotes for like, it was just odd. It was hard to read. It was because it was like that. And I have to admit, like, I tried to get in them as much as I could. And I think part of it is because I knew the movies, so I kind of knew the basic structure of it. But I had a hard time in the 6th grade reading it, and I don't think I ever finished Return of the King, really. Yeah, I don't think I did. But especially since... here's the thing about Lord of the Rings. Now, most of us are, of course, familiar with the Peter Jackson thing, and I might as well start talking about those. Because, I mean, that had been a project that people have been wanting to do for years, and it was one of those types of things where it was like, if we do this, we got to go all the way. And I think Peter Jackson pitched, like, maybe we can do it as 2 movies, and then Warner Brothers said, like, well, if this works, why don't we do it as 3 movies, because there's 3 books. That just makes sense. And then it was just a matter, and they did do something kind of amazing at the time, which was they filmed all 3 movies at once, which, you know, that's something I think was only really done when they filmed back-to-back sequels. That was something that they did. Like, say, for example, Back to the Future, that was the first time that they, I don't know if that was the first time, but I mean, essentially, when they did the first Back to the Future film, they decided to do 2 and 3. So they actually filmed those 2 movies at once. And that gives you a lot of creative power, because you realize, like, oh, yeah, we can establish this in here, and then we can, and if we want to change this here, we can change it here, and stuff like that. And then that'll add to the 3rd movie. So for the whole Lord of the Rings, they filmed all 3 movies at once. And this was a huge risk at the time, because what if the first movie hadn't worked? What if the first movie had just sucked? Then you would have to have had 2 bombs just in the can, just waiting to go off, as I've heard described. So, yeah, but definitely, I mean, you saw, I mean, if you've seen Lord of the Rings, I mean, that was a big risk at the time. They basically just said $300 million on these 3 films. So that's $100 million each. And this was back when a film that cost $100 million was not really done at the time. I mean, at the time, Titanic had cost $200 million, and most people thought that was just outrageous. Well, of course, it made so much money after that. Unfortunately, it sent a wrong message to Hollywood that bigger budgets can give us bigger profits. However, I mean, you need to really have something solid. Now, Peter Jackson was able to make something really good, and it shows he had a lot of love for this whole franchise, and I think it's great that he was given the power to do that. There are some people out there that don't like Peter Jackson's versions of Lord of the Rings, and I gotta admit, it does stray away from the book a lot by the time you get to the last one. It just does. I think actually the first movie is very faithful to its book as far as its storyline is concerned. By the time you get to the 3rd book, I mean, that movie starts doing things that really aren't in the book. And there's sometimes I was able to forgive that, but other times I was not. But I'll get into stuff like that. Now, okay, and then of course, I mean, obviously, Peter Jackson was called back to do The Hobbit, which he never wanted to do. I mean, he wanted, Guillermo del Toro was supposed to do those films, and I'm told that his version of The Hobbit was done with all kinds of strange sketches. His version of The Hobbit would have looked very different than, say, if you know anything about Guillermo del Toro's films, they have a very dark sort of undertone to them, like, say, Pan's Labyrinth, Hellboy, The Shape of Water, stuff like that. They just kind of have that look to them. And I can't imagine that The Hobbit would have looked actually kind of good. I didn't really like how, I mean, The Hobbit really is long enough to make maybe 1 movie out of, maybe 2 movies if you're lucky. And they really had to stretch out like those last few paragraphs of The Hobbit to get a 3rd movie out of this. I did not like the way those films were cut up, and yeah, that's kind of how that worked on that one. As far as that goes, and now we have the Rings of Power, that Amazon series that I just don't really like. I've tried watching it, and I was just so bored, and I just didn't really... Here's the thing about Tolkien's world. It is very well developed. It is a huge world and stuff like that. And yeah, so let's see. And because it is so huge, there's like all kinds of, I mean, there's there's really all kinds of lore involved in that. And when you get into that, that's like there, I mean, okay, here's the thing. I'd like Lord of the Rings, that's the third age of Middle Earth. There's a first and second age. I didn't know about this. I don't really know how many books of Lord of the Rings are there. It seems like every once in a while, the Tolkien family will go like, hey, we found this other book that J.R.R. Tolkien was working on, and then they publish it. And then, hey, yeah, that's kind of how that works. So, yeah. Let's see. Okay. Sorry, I was looking at a flash goal I have here, so I'm just gonna just hit that. So yeah, I have no idea what that's gonna do. So yeah, I'm trying. Sorry, once again, I starting this on here on YouTube and stuff like that, and that man, now that blocked a lot of stuff. Thank you for the people that have joined me on TikTok, like The Jungle, Roger Averbeck, and user. Oh man, I'm not going to read all those numbers. But Kayla Pitts, thank you very much. I'm going to say hi to you. All right. Okay, so let's get into Harry Potter. Harry Potter was one of those book series that I heard about. I just happened to be looking at Time magazine once, and then it said like, this is the big thing now. And of course, here's the thing about Time magazine. Time magazine is owned by Time Warner, so they love to promote the news that they love. So naturally, Harry Potter was a cover story there because at the time, they probably had bought the film rights to the Harry Potter movies, and they were probably planning on making that. But if you looked at the, I think the New York Times bestseller list, I think book 1, 2, and 3 of the Harry Potter series was on there very steadily. And so people were loving this, people besides adults. We all know about J.K. Rowling and her views about trans people, and so this has caused a lot of people to essentially separate art from artists when they talk about this. So if you want to leave a comment on that, you could, because I know there's been a lot of people who've been hurt by her comments, and there's been a lot of people that, hey, I mean, it's never good when an author basically says things, and there was always, and even before she had made these comments, she kept like bringing up things like, oh, Hermione is black and Dumbledore's gay and stuff like that. She would just do stuff like that. And, and I get it. It's like, you're an author. I mean, this is your world. You can alter it any way you like. But I mean, dude, you've already written everything on this. So eventually you can't really, I'm not really certain you can do the thing of essentially, what is that? Essentially retcon your own work. But yeah. So my experience with it was, let's see. I mean, I do remember seeing the first film and was very interested in it. Saw the second, third. By the third, I had basically just said, screw it. I'm just going to read the books because the books were slowly winding down. And I just basically decided like, okay, I might as well just get into this. Read all the books. And so I think I read the fourth book, The Goblet of Fire, which I consider my favorite. And also the favorite of the movies, which is great because I mean, I guess it would be great if the thing peaked at the last book rather than in the fourth book. That way you have a constant stream of really better and better and better works, which is what you should really strive for, but that's hard to do on purpose. It really is. So, yeah. Let's see. So I enjoyed these books and stuff like that. And, yeah. So did I like the movies? Sure. I kind of felt like as the movies went on, they had to be less and less accurate to the books because honestly, the books were getting longer and longer. So of course, by the time they got to the last movie, they split it up into 2 movies, and that was starting to become a big thing at the time. It seems like everybody was doing that. And, I think the Twilight movie did that. And, now here's the thing. I'm gonna brief. I think I might have said this on my show before or something like that. Whenever I saw that happening, when they split up one book into 2, for The Hobbit, I never really thought that was really necessary. But when it comes time to the last book of a series, generally I don't really know how to explain this. If you're going to tell a story and you have a series of books, usually by the time you get to the last book, you have a lot going on in it. And so by the time you get to the last book, it's mostly about all the rising action taking place. So the last book should technically be all action. You don't have to necessarily spend time on description or stuff like that. When you're adapting any book into a movie, you don't have to spend as much time as description as, say, the author does. And there are authors that spend pages and pages of pages upon description. I believe J.R. Tolkien's description of Minas Tirith was quite a lot, actually. But if you're making a movie on it, you just show it. There it is, And so it's kind of like, and here's the thing: whenever you're adapting something like, when you got a 500-page book, you got to get out a pair of scissors, because essentially you go like, crap, how are we going to do this? If you look at, say, an actual book versus an actual movie script or screenplay, you will see how skinny that screenplay is and how little time is devoted to, say, a description of something like that. It's very brief at most. And so usually like 3 lines and then this, then dialogue, and that dialogue has to be very quick. You don't really have time to do like a block text or something like that, because that really gets boring if it's on film. Trust me, you might be bored as far as the block text I'm giving here. So when it came down to do that last movie of Harry Potter, it actually made sense that they would split that up into 2 books, because by the time you get to the last few hundred pages of Harry Potter, it's all action and all battles. And that looks good on film. And so people were looking forward to that. And I imagine that movie probably did pretty well, and it got Warner Brothers its money and stuff like that. And now we're in the stage where essentially Warner Brothers, I think on HBO, is doing like this, 10-year series, and they've already got the cast going on, and there's already people that are complaining about the cast, and of course they are, because that's the way these fandoms work, right? I don't know. So it's kind of crazy, and it'll be very interesting what they come up with for that. So, hey, Blaze Finley, I think you were on my last show yesterday. Thank you. I did subscribe to you, and I believe you subscribed to me. Thank you. Okay, and I'm seeing a lot of people in my TikTok chat that are going in here. So, yeah. Hey, Blaze, do you like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings? I'll give you some time for you to answer that. So, yeah. So, all right. Okay, I'm seeing other people in there. Oh, you like both of those? Okay. Jeez. Blaze, maybe we should do like some, I don't know. So like, I don't know how to do like, man. If you were here for episode 2 of my crazy crossovers, I tried to do this thing where people wanted to come in and add, and then all I got was people who wanted to swallow hot sauce. So yeah, it got a little bit strange on that one. So let's see. Hey Blaze, I got a good idea. If you got something good to say about Harry Potter and stuff like that, yeah, and Lord of the Rings, let me know. I was just talking about both those franchises, both owned by Warner Brothers. Now that I think about it. Then again, here's the thing. I might as well say something about this now. I'm guessing that J.K. Rowling still has pretty much the rights to Harry Potter. Now, I know those 3 movies, totally forgot to talk about those. The Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them have come out, and I believe they're canon to the Harry Potter universe. They made 3 of those, and honestly, I don't really remember that 3rd one very well. I really don't. I just don't. Seriously, I don't really remember that one. And honestly, I was kind of bored on the first 2. I don't even remember the second one at all. I know Johnny Depp was like in that or something. And I don't know. It just got kind of... Here's the thing about prequels. Prequels, generally, we do prequels a lot, don't we? And I think the reason why they don't work is because we know how they end. Yeah, that's kind of how that works. Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting a strange message on YouTube Live, just a YOU. So thank you, Blaze. If I'm supposed to know what that means, I kind of don't. I'm really sorry, but I'm hopefully you're nice and stuff like that. You know what? Okay. Yeah, just oh, you. Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I just don't. Yeah, this is one of those things where it's like, sure, I can talk for like an hour about pretty much anything, but yeah, I should probably get to that. And hey, I'm going to get to my idea for a crossover here at the 3:30 mark. So just pay attention, and we'll have my story idea for a crossover on this. And I was just about to get to this idea as far as who owns the rights to this. So I'm pretty sure that even though Warner Brothers puts out the films that these Harry Potter things are based on, like all 8 Harry Potter movies and those 3 Fantastic Beasts movies, and I'm pretty sure they probably own the rights to that show that they're going to put out on HBO Max. I'm guessing J.K. Rowling has the final say on this, and I believe that she always had the final say on the movies, which I think was actually rather good. I think that's really great because I think she was very involved with this kind of thing, and I think she actually was involved in producing like I think she was always there, like on set. Like the director would say, like, okay, we're gonna do this in the film. Can we do that? And she would often say, no, you can't do that. Okay. Blaze, okay, I'm sorry you have to go. All right, thank you. Thank you for joining me. And yeah, I'm going to have to check out your content. You know what? I'm going to do that now. Anyway, so here's the thing. So I believe that anything that happened in those Harry Potter movies were essentially J.K. Rowling approved. So, and oftentimes that was, so that was kind of strange because they were making those first 2 movies before the series had even come to a close. So oftentimes she would have to say, you can't really do that. And it's like they'd ask her why, and she says, because that's going to be important later on. And so J.K. Rowling really knew what was going on there. Now, as far as Lord of the Rings goes, I'm pretty sure that if they want to make a Lord of the Rings movie, or if they want to do like another series, like say the Rings of Power, anything related to that, they probably got to go through the Tolkien family. They probably got to go like, hey, can we do this? And it's like, we kind of want to do this thing. And it's like, yeah. I'm assuming that's how that goes. So I'm assuming that you probably couldn't just mix Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings. Oh my gosh, please tell me that would be a great title of a book. I haven't watched Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, by the way. Didn't they make that in a book? And I think that's a play or something like that. I have no idea as far as what that is about. I do know that there was a play called Puffs, based on Hufflepuff, based in the Harry Potter world and stuff like that. My son was in that for his high school, and I loved it. So, yeah. So, anyway, so let's see. Cheryl Denny, 35, thank you for joining me on TikTok. So, and Gustavo Barcio 0, oh man, I'm probably terribly mispronounced that. Thank you for joining me on there. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to talk about fantasy for a little bit. You know, as a genre. When it comes to stories like, say, Lord of the Rings, there's kind of like this kind of medieval thing that happens when you put in a fantasy. Like, you tend to assume that every time you're reading a fantasy, you're sort of starting in some kind of medieval world. You know, the Dark Ages. And hey, I mean, that makes sense. These were ages where essentially stuff like this, you know, were wizards and stuff like that. I'm sure there was constant superstitious and stuff going on. And so knights and dragons, you know, we just associate this with that because we just do. So oftentimes there seems to be certain conventions that happen in these fantasy things where you have like dwarves, elves, and all kinds of things, and you just kind of wizards and knights with swords and stuff with that. And honestly, the person that really tried to almost like, I wouldn't say canonize this, but kind of like put it in sort of like a big reference was probably that Dungeons and Dragons game, because it just gave you an opportunity to play as these things, and it established very firm rules about this. Like there was thieves and stuff like that, and they all had different rules. And I remember playing the game as a kid, and you know, there were kind of things like, sure, there were wizards, but the wizards couldn't use swords. They could use a dagger, and I think that was about it. And honestly, the magic users or whatever in Dungeons and Dragons, they started off really wimpy. They only had like 4 hit points. I'm not going to explain what hit points are. You're going to have to do a little digging as far as the world of Dungeons and Dragons is. So a lot of things sort of take from this thing. So a lot of fantasies have this, are set in these kind of medieval kingdoms. In some cases, they're on a different world, or let's see, trying to think of just examples on that. And here's the thing that I wasn't really certain about with Lord of the Rings. Does it take place on our world? And so is Middle Earth actually Earth? And here's the thing. If you watch the film, say, Lord of the Rings, the animated one, The Return of the King, the one that Rankin Bass did, and I can't remember the year that came out. That film is told with sort of a framing device of Bilbo's 100th and whatever birthday party, where they talk about how, Frodo lost his finger, and they talk about the whole last book of the series. And in it, there's a bit of a thing saying like, where Gandalf says the age of man is happening. And they were talking about how Pippin and Merry were both different heights, which I think was something that was actually in the Lord of the Rings book when they drink the water from Treebeard or something, maybe in the Two Towers. There is so much stuff here that honestly I might be getting wrong. So anyway, I always sort of had this feeling when I watched those movies that Lord of the Rings is some sort of history from Earth, because if you look at their calendar is the same as ours. There's actually a fun fact. My firstborn was born on October 24th. And what's funny, I remember there was kind of this line in the first Lord of the Rings movie where Gandalf tells Frodo, and it's October 24th, if you are interested. And I thought like, hey, that's Curie's birthday, or my daughter's or my firstborn's birthday. And I just kind of thought that was, you don't need to really know that, but I mean, hey, that's just something that I just kind of like to, come on, everybody has something that they can personally link to these things. And I've got a lot of personal links to this. So yeah. I mean, I've pretty much grew up reading Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. And I've read the books like 3 times. So, and I get more out of them every time. And maybe I need to stop watching the movies and read the books again, just so I can go like, okay, this is kind of what I feel. I did feel like Peter Jackson's World of Lord of the Rings did capture what his version of Lothlorien was exactly how I imagined it. So I'll give him on that. So anyway, and getting back to Lord of the Rings, does it take place on Earth? Here's the thing. That's like asking whether does Star Wars take place in our world? Like, does Earth exist somewhere in the Star Wars world? Maybe, but for the story that for Lord of the Rings needs to tell, it doesn't really matter, because this is a world that's divorced from our world entirely. And and that's so much fun to do, to tell a story that way, because you don't have to worry about things that happen in our world. You don't have to worry about the characters paying taxes and stuff like that. No, it's a different world. It's a world full of swords, and you just went out and you harvested the land. You didn't go shopping, and that was kind of how that was. So it's Dungeons and Dragons, not papers and paychecks, is the kind of the whole thing. Anyway, so in watching, so here's the thing about Harry Potter. I guess the term would be modern fantasy, because it takes place at least in our times. In fact, some have said like the first book takes place in 1991. I didn't really know how they get that date. I'm sure there's probably a reason for it. I'm sure somebody might want to leave a comment on that, which reminds me, I still haven't figured out how to read comments on this thing. Yeah, so that's kind of that. So here's the thing. To actually do a crossover between Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings, are we going to have to do that stupid thing where like multiverse, and they like one of them, and they have to like bridge the gap interdimensionally or something like that? I don't want to do that. I just kind of want to go with like, maybe they take place in the same world. And here's my, here's some way that you could, and of course, J.K. Rowling would never, of course, do that and stuff like that. So then again, maybe Narnia takes place in this world. I don't know. Maybe oh shoot, am I really going to go for a threesome on these crazy crossovers? I don't know. But here's the thing. It's very obvious that the character Voldemort wants to be a Dark Lord. Wouldn't it be great if he was actually inspired by Sauron? Like he actually somehow knew about this whole thing? If you look in the world of Harry Potter, there are dwarves in it, right? I think they were the ones that run the bank or something. No, shoot, it's goblins, right? But there are centaurs and other things. Are there elves and dwarves in Harry Potter? I don't actually remember, honestly. Oh, shoot, yeah. I'm sorry. Dobby is a house elf. Duh. Surprised if you feel like, yeah. Hey, there's some people joining in. I'm going to say hi to you. Thank you. Yeah, there is okay, so there are house elves in this thing. And again, this was a lot of things with J.K. Rowling when he brought up the subject of house elves and this whole concept that they like doing it. And they're essentially indentured slaves, but they like doing it. And this is where it gets really crazy on this. If you think of the race of elves in Lord of the Rings, how they seemed to be this very, I don't know, they just were very noble and just shining type people. I mean, they were freaking immortal, for crying out loud. I mean, they could be killed, but I mean, they were, for the most part, they were just this perfect type of people who didn't feel heat or cold or anything like that. And, you know, they were super people. And, you know, hey, that's kind of cool. So I don't, so maybe Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, they could be connected if you wanted to. I want to go with the whole idea, because I've mentioned this before in my crazy crossovers, how oftentimes when certain stories of the past had crossed over, like in comic books, like they did like a Spider-Man meets Superman and X-Men meets the Teen Titans. In both those versions of the stories, they basically just sort of pretended that these two characters have always existed in the same universe at any given time. That's fine. I think you could probably do that with Harry Potter meets Lord of the Rings. So we got to get them to meet up. How are we going to do that? Because Harry Potter takes place, or I'm sorry, Lord of the Rings takes place in the past and Harry Potter takes place in modern times. Easy. Because we know time travel exists in the world of Harry Potter. And unfortunately, in the third book, when the Time Tunneler, I think it was called, or Time Turner, I think it was called, was introduced, that brought up a lot of things that suddenly created a lot of, that brought up a lot of things that were just, once you open that box, you couldn't close it. Because there were a lot of people that kept saying like, well, if you've got a time turner, just go back every time something bad happens and prevent it from happening. And yeah, you probably should do that if you want to do that. Or maybe you should just accept the fact that time happens and stuff like that has happened. I did like the way the time turners were used in the Harry Potter movie. The idea that essentially, yes, they went back in time, but the stuff that they had done in that time had apparently always happened. So like there was a time where a stone went through the window, and then we find out later that they, in fact, did that later. But it just hadn't happened yet. It gets really complicated. There's like two schools of thought as far as time travel goes. The one where you can actually go back in time, screw up anything you want, and by the time you get back to the present or that future, it'll all be changed. And then there's the theory that if you do that, that's always going to be that way. So you sort of pretzel time. The film Kate and Leopold was played with this idea like that, where essentially like a character went back in time and apparently, yeah, they kind of pretzeled time, but then they said like, no, that is the pretzel or something like that. Anyway, those are concepts I don't really want to talk about now because my mind kind of gets really frazzled whenever I do. I get all cross-eyed like Austin Powers in that one movie where they did time travel and stuff like that. Okay, so here's what could happen. Let's say, for example, Voldemort is inspired by the Dark Lord Sauron. Maybe he finds some old scroll or there's some information about this stuff. And I have no idea what the future of Middle-earth was going to be like. And maybe it'll be like that movie. You ever seen that movie Bright, the one with Will Smith? I always kind of imagine that is probably what the version of the future after Lord of the Rings was like, because they reference stuff like the orcs and the Dark Lord and stuff like that. And I'm kind of wondering, like, is that supposed to be like a future from Lord of the Rings? Bright is a film that actually has a good concept, but it just is so bad. It's just like, it just doesn't really, I think what's her name? Lindsay Ellis did a thing about the hypothesis of lazy world building and talking about how right is bad, and I agree. By the way, it has a good. If you ever watch that video on YouTube, and it's got this song called Orc Cop, just look this up. This song is just awesome. The song is fire. Anyway, so let's say, for example, Voldemort in our time, and I don't know what book this would take place in. This is Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings. Maybe this is a summer thing, because we don't know what Harry did in the summertime. So we'll call it book 4.5, maybe. Yeah, we'll just call it that, because Voldemort doesn't get a body until like book 4, and I know that's a spoiler, but dude, I'm assuming you've already read this stuff. So let's say Voldemort gets hold of one of those time turners, and he just kind of, I don't know, he uses more magic to amplify that thing, so it spins like super, super fast, so he doesn't, and then so he goes back in time to the area of Middle Earth, or I guess England was Middle Earth, because I've heard a lot of people say that Tolkien's version of Middle Earth is essentially like ancient England or something like that. And here's the thing about Middle Earth. There are years on it. So I'm kind of going like, how does that work? And it's like, I have no idea. So he goes back to that time, and he's trying to, I don't know, here's the thing. This is where it gets kind of complicated, because essentially if Voldemort goes back in time and alters events, he might alter the fact that if he alters it so Sauron wins, then that's going to affect his timeline, and Voldemort might not be born. And maybe that would be kind of an interesting thing to go with, because here's the thing. One thing I liked about reading Harry Potter is that Voldemort was actually very smart as a villain. He wasn't just evil, but yeah, he was ruled by passion and stuff like that. If you look at the way Voldemort tried to take over, it's very similar to how the best dictators take over. Like they go in, they go quietly, and they change things, but only subtly, but they also make very big things. For example, in the Ministry of Magic headquarters, there's a statue that's changed to whatever it was before, to just a thing that says magic is might. And it's kind of like, wow, that's pretty pretentious, don't you think? And at the same time, everybody just kind of went along with it. And so here's the thing. Voldemort was smart enough to realize, like, I don't want to just come in like a flood. I want to come in subtly, start changing things here and there. So by the time I actually do take over and just sit on my throne, everybody's so used to how everything is that they won't even notice that I'm in power. That just suddenly and then they'll go and then it'll be too late for anybody to do anything about it. So that's kind of what I think Voldemort's goals were in the Harry Potter series. So imagine him going back in time to, of course, gain more power. So what does he want? He wants the ring, doesn't he? Now, this is where it gets kind of complicated. And here's the thing. Maybe they could do one of those things where essentially like Voldemort goes back in time, wins, and then suddenly the time stream is altered. And so maybe there's certain things now, but here's the thing. If that was altered, this is one of those, this is actually reminding me of a Star Trek episode called Yesterday's Enterprise, where there was some sort of hole in time, and Enterprise, I think C comes in, meets Enterprise D, and that affects the future, or that affects the present of the Enterprise D, and it becomes a darker place to be. And because of that, and because of that, they're still fighting the Klingons. There's a lot of stuff going on there. And they suddenly realize, like, we have to send the Enterprise C back to help out, and then that'll heal up the entire world. And that led to actually more episodes of Star Trek Next Generation because they brought Tasha Yar back alive in that thing, which was kind of weird. But yeah, maybe they just didn't have that event where Tasha Yar was killed in that particular timeline. So maybe that would happen here. Voldemort goes back in time, and the moment he goes back in time, he changes something. And so many things have changed. Now, maybe there's some sort of, I don't know, super science / magic here that, I don't know, somebody like Mrs. McGonagall or Ms. McGonagall. I don't know. Was she married? I don't know. And then, what's his name? Oh man, what is that guy's name? Richard Harris character. Shoot, the headmaster, Dumbledore. Maybe he knows something that he learns. Maybe he's figured out he's got magic that realizes that Voldemort has done something. Maybe he's figured out that this has happened. He's set up some sort of thing in case Voldemort tried a strategy like this. Kind of like he sort of figured out the whole Horcrux thing. And so they figure out that Voldemort has gone back in time. So he recruits Harry and Hermione and Ron to also go back in time to stop him. So now the plot line becomes like the Star Trek movie First Contact. Why not? So from there, this is where the characters can meet up. And this is where scenes start to write itself. And by that, I mean Harry Potter meets Frodo Baggins. Damn. Do you even want, I mean, I could just, Harry Potter meets Frodo Baggins. Dang, maybe I should have titled this thing here. I probably would have gotten a lot of viewers on that one. I'd like to see how Harry and Frodo interact because I think they're very much fundamentally different characters. Harry has been born out of abuse and has lived, you know, pretty much in the closet. Okay, all right. Okay, I suddenly realized, okay, I can make a lot of bad jokes here I'm not going to make. But essentially, Frodo, I'm not sure after his parents died what happened. He was also an orphan. I think Bilbo took him in, but I mean, it sounds like Bilbo treated him with a lot of loving care. And, you know, Bilbo was a very rich man in Bag End, so I imagine Frodo wasn't exactly raised in poverty, but he was raised in that pastoral lifestyle along with Sam. Oh, speaking of Sam, can you imagine Ron Weasley meeting Samwise Gamgee? Dang, I want to see that happen. And so, I don't know, would they have to alter that whole thing about the quest for the ring and stuff like that? Maybe they could help out. Maybe this would be one of those. Would this be like I don't know. So yeah, if you're doing like Harry Potter meets Lord of the Rings, would you have them come into the story and maybe help them set up the story? Yeah, why not? We could do that. You know, this would be a good time for you to fix some things. Maybe, hey, maybe this is why the Eagles aren't willing to take Frodo to the Mount Doom, you know, and destroy the ring, because everybody talks about that. That's a big flaw in the world of Lord of the Rings. It's like if they got the Eagles to take them away from the volcanoes that was going off, couldn't you have the Eagles take them to the whole thing and then just drop in the thing? You could have settled this in like less than an hour. And yeah, so that's kind of how that works. So I'm interested in, I'm just kind of going on what that could be like. And here's the thing, I'm opening up the book on this as far as like anything you guys want to, I don't know, comment on this and stuff like that. I can't, unfortunately, I can't really read comments on this because, darn it, I wish I don't know. This is one of those things where it's like I got to figure out how this actually works, and then I'm probably maybe I'm looking even worse because of this. I don't know. But so basically, yeah, that's the setup of my plot line: time travel. So Voldemort comes in from back in time and to try and grab the ring for himself. And maybe he's actually thought this through. He goes like, okay, Sauron, here's what's going to happen. We can't really alter history because no one ever thinks this through. They just kind of go like, you know, the villains in films always try and do this. They go back in time and take something just for their own. You know, maybe he's actually thought this through. He kind of goes like, okay, because, you know, like I said, Voldemort's kind of smart. And he meets up with Sauron, who's just like a friggin' eye, and basically says like, okay, here's the deal. We're going to make sure, maybe he tells him that, maybe he spoils the whole plot. Maybe he goes like, okay, here's how it's going to work. This stupid hobbit, this stupid ring, goes to Mount Doom, and he throws it in there, and there's this little pesky guy named Gollum. And if it probably wasn't for Gollum, he probably wouldn't have thrown it in there. Probably that wouldn't have happened or something like that. He's seen this. He's read the history of Middle-earth or something like that. He's read all Lord of the Rings books. He's read all the books. And so Voldemort comes back and goes like, okay, Sauron, here's the thing. I'm going to help you succeed, but you got to help me succeed. And the way you do it is like this. You're going to take the Ring of Power. You're going to do this. You're going to ensure that I, Tom Marvolo Riddle, will be born. Because I want to be born. And then after that, I'm assuming if Sauron got the ring, would he be immortal? I don't know. Maybe he would be. Because he was a friggin' eye, and he kind of died before, and he comes back as a friggin' eye. How does that work? I don't know. So, so Sauron and Voldemort, they have an alliance. They go like, listen, I'll help you. So it's like a reality show now. So it's like, and so then the Eye of Sauron goes like, okay, you may agree to the deal. And Voldemort's like, thank you very much on this deal here. He's got no nose and stuff like that because he's the snake guy now and stuff like that. It's probably a bad riff. Ralph, okay. His name's not Ralph, but it's spelled like Ralph, okay? Fiennes, that guy that played Voldemort. Anyway, so they make a deal, and so they each get a share of power when in the present time of Harry Potter. That changes everything about English history. I mean, because dude, that would change so much. I mean, maybe they actually win the American Revolution or something like that. I mean, that changes all that. Oh man, maybe England's like overpower the whole thing, like. Oh man, maybe they haven't given up on India yet, and the world's like really freaking racist and stuff like that because. Anyway, so yeah, give that some plot through. So anyway, that's when Dumbledore says like, we've got to stop him, and they go back in time to that time, and they bring back, I don't know, Ron, Hermione, and Harry because they're our main characters. Why shouldn't we do that? I don't know, maybe Hagrid goes along. Maybe there's like a whole fellowship. Why don't we do that? We'll just bring a whole fellowship. Maybe Lupin comes along. That'd be awesome. Get a werewolf in there. Is there werewolves in Lord of the Rings? I have no idea. They're vampires? Anyway, so are there vampires in Harry Potter? I never really thought about that. Oh shoot. Okay, maybe we should cross that with Twilight and Narnia. Oh my gosh, this is a Venn diagram I don't even want to fill out. So they go in there. So I haven't quite figured out how to do this yet. And this is one of those times where it's like, I kind of want to be very true to the canon. So this would be kind of like a little side quest that Voldemort and Harry would do because I kind of want the books to end the way they end because I kind of like the way they end. So yeah. Wendell Gates, thank you for joining. Here's a hi. So yeah, so basically after this time travel plot where Harry and Hermione and Ron go to stop them, and yeah, this is where Sam can. This is where so we have like Dumbledore's Fellowship meets the Fellowship of the Ring. This is where it gets great. This is where Dumbledore and Gandalf can have conversations. Wow, what would they talk about? Can you imagine that? It's be like, I'm gay. Oh, I am too. I have no idea. Okay. And then I have, this would be one of those things where they could do something like, I see your hand has been, let me heal your hand up, Dumbledore, or something. Okay, we could really mess with the canon here with this. This is where Legolas could meet, I don't know. Oh, Gimli could meet Hagrid. That'd be pretty awesome, wouldn't it? So it'd be like short, grumpy guy meets big, kind of not so grumpy guy. I wouldn't describe Hagrid's exterior as grumpy. Hagrid's kind of friendly, actually. Hagrid likes animals and stuff. There's a lot of great beasts in Middle Earth, maybe like the River Guardian or something like that. Maybe Hagrid could try and befriend it or something like that. So maybe they could go through the whole. Maybe they're trying to beat. So yeah. So these two fellowships now, the Fellowship of the Ring and the Fellowship of the Dumbledore, for lack of a better term, actually meet together, and they're trying to destroy the ring, and they're trying to basically just kind of guide them through this whole thing. So yeah, so now there's like two wizards at Helm's Deep with Dumbledore and Gandalf, and there's like, and then with Hermione there, she's casting all the good spells and stuff like that. I haven't given these parts much thought. There's a lot of details that I haven't really fleshed out. I don't fully intend to write any of these things that I'm talking about. But these are just fun things to talk about as far as like, what if you actually mix this with this? There were some things like, like I said, there was a JLA meets the Avengers, Justice League meets the Avengers. That's kind of cool. And I'm told that story still remained canon. Yeah. So here's the thing. Do any of you want to see Harry Potter meet Lord of the Rings? Is this just something that just shouldn't happen? Even if I had the rights to do both, would you even want to see this? And here's the thing. Doesn't that change things if you do that? Because, I know there are some people that are very big on canon, and I am one of them. When I grew up, Star Wars was only those first 3 movies, A New Hope, and they didn't even call it that back then. It was just Star Wars. Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And I loved watching all 3 of them together because I felt like I had this complete story, and every little thing that happened in them was like canon, and it was really great, and you could quote it all because it was just its supremely great story. By adding in this, we're kind of creating this sort of fanfic. But then again, we all know fanfic exists. And there's good fanfic and there's bad fanfic. And most of the time when you hear the word fanficky, it's usually done in a pejorative or negative sense. It just is. So to mix these 2 together and then create the obvious time tunneler plot to really get them together. So in other words, Harry goes to Middle Earth. Harry Potter and the Middle Earth. Maybe that's what we should call it. Harry Potter and the something, okay? Because it's usually Harry Potter and the something. So yeah, we can do that. We're going to do that. And maybe there's a new version of the Deathly Hallows. Oh my gosh, Harry Potter has a cloak that can make him invisible, and Frodo can turn invisible. They got that in common. Shoot, I didn't even think about that. That's really interesting. They wouldn't even have to use the ring anymore, would they? They already got Harry's cloak. Keep forgetting there's a lot of things that obviously J.K. Rowling was inspired by the works of J.R. Tolkien, as well as, of course, C.S. Lewis. A lot of fantasy stuff got kind of thrown in there, I imagine. So yeah, you can do a lot with this kind of thing. Anyway, so oh boy. Okay, I only got like 4 minutes left, and I'm pretty bushed on this. So I'm gonna open up. All right. You know what? I got some spare time today. Does anyone want to join in? Ooh, I don't know. I don't know if I should do that. I'm afraid if I do that, that's going to open up the gates here and stuff like that. Ooh. So, yeah. Can't remember if I've... Okay. All right, yeah, I'm kind of wrapping this up here as far as like this whole thing. Now remember, okay, you know what? I haven't really announced this, but I believe that once I post this, my YouTube lives on my channel, I think that actually shows up. So if you missed this, or if you want to see the rest of this, but it doesn't show up till the next day. I've kind of discovered that. So in other words, like I've done a live and then I hit like, please go public with this, and it shows up, all right. But it just kind of goes like, there it is. And then I can't really tell if like anybody's even really watching it or anything like that. It's just kind of there. So I don't know if that's like a thing that, I'm able to click on it just fine, and and I can watch it all, but I'm not sure if I really want to do that because I've kind of already did it. If you guys like it, maybe you can leave a comment on there on my YouTube, The Geek Church on YouTube. Please like and subscribe on this, please. Do that because that would be great. That helps out a lot. Trying to do this professionally, and okay, I got some work to do. I'm pretty sure of that. So yeah, so I can see Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings really working, and tomorrow is going to be the mother lode. This is the one I really want to talk about. The idea of mixing Star Wars and Star Trek, and these are 2 franchises that are pretty much owned by. Well, I think Star Wars is still owned by Disney, and I think Paramount is under the umbrella, or Star Trek is under the Paramount umbrella, which, I don't know, is that being bought by Skydance or something like that? There's that whole deal that's happening that, where poor Stephen Colbert got fired over. Now, at this time of this recording, Jimmy Kimmel has gotten suspended indefinitely on that, all because they just have the gall to say bad stuff about the president. Yeah, I know. If you want to try and censor me, Trump, please. You'd probably see my channel would probably be on the rise. So anyway, okay, so tune in tomorrow as far as that's concerned. I don't know if I think I got an appointment there, but I'll work around it or something like that. Anyway, I'm going to call it for now. This has been Mark Rollins from the Geek Church. Be sure to like and subscribe on the Geek Church YouTube channel. And this TikTok thing. I got a lot more videos. I talk a lot about stuff, and I like to do gadget reviews, and I do a lot of those. And I got a few coming up this weekend, and yeah, so that'll be great. Anyway, this is Mark from the Geek Church signing off.